today. What are we listening to? Besides really cool plug-in grooves from Airwave Volume 2. What are we listening to? Let's go to this. Here's without it. I know it says the name up there, but just play along like you don't know, okay? What is making this? Sound really cool instead of sounding like this. Or this. Instead of this. The answer obviously is filters. Today's GuruSynthesis is on filters. You can take a sound look at that. Instead of filters. Filters do the heavy lifting that give a synthesizer its identity. You need to understand some important things about filters, and that's why I'm here. So this video, of course, is sponsored by my website. Please come to pluginguru.com. Sabersphere Volume 2 is just now out. My dog is barking. It's actually now 317 patches, 75 multis. Tim went through and made 15 more multis that were CPU light. We call them the easy versions because some of them were too many patches, too many effects and stuff like that. So he trimmed them down so there's the regular version that will kill your computer and a version that is, as he said, 30 to 50% more CPU efficient. So that's very nice of him. Those multis are really fun to play with. Thank you for your support. It's how I make my living. I appreciate it. So filters is the heavy part of a synthesizer. This is where synthesizers get their identity in a lot of cases. The oscillator is equally important, of course. We don't want to diminish that, but equally important is having a filter that gives you lots of options to do not only the typical things really well, but maybe some unique things too, right? But before we get there, you need to understand some things about filters that you might not know about. When you look at a filter list and you see over here, when you go to the presets and you see LPFs all over the place, and you see the 6 dB, 12 dB, 24 dB, 36 dB, 48 dB, do you know what that means? Or is that just the number of people on the bus? Maybe that's what you think it is. Highpass, HPF, bandpass, usually BPF. What do those do? Do you know what that does? You need to know what those do. You really are not going to get very far in synthesis if you don't know. Those are the main important parameters. There's more to it, of course. So let's take a look at them. Let's go to a simple synth. This is a stock synthesizer inside of Logic Pro X. So I'm going to pop this up so I can freeze if I want to freeze the waveform. So we're going to be looking, first of all, at the low pass filter and the band. Well, let's do it this way. Low pass filter means it lets low frequencies pass, which means as it comes down, it's cutting down the high end, but it's letting low frequencies pass. A high pass filter removes low frequencies, so only the high frequencies pass. So high pass means that they get to pass. Low pass means they get to pass. Band pass is unique in that it's going to do a little bit of both. It's going to kill low end and high end to make a specific band. Okay. And you see me raising this, and you see it making a sharper peak. And if you notice, that peak is called emphasis. We also call it resonance. In the old days in the mini Moog, it was right here. And it's a way to emphasize what this cutoff point is. Put extra attention on whatever frequency that is. And these synthesizers, they don't tell you an exact hertz. If you go to Serum, I believe, so I bring it resonant. Hear that? So at about 85 hertz. Oh, it's actually higher than that. It's showing the, oh, that's cool. It's showing the modulation source value. So because of modulation of the envelope, if I bring this down to 0, then there's no modulation source, so that this is, so now it's the exact frequency, so that's cool. So emphasis at 1K is very irritating. Ow. That should make you very uncomfortable. But if this is set at the right place, and you have it at the right frequency, down in the like close to 100 hertz or lower, you can start to get some really nice emphasis on the low end, just where you make nice bass sounds. I use that all the time. In Omnispheres, let's go initialize everybody. Turn off the filter EG. Okay, so emphasis or resonance is, I'll show you where this term comes from and where they've renamed it some, but where this all started was with this stuff. If we go to, let's see, Universal Audio. Let's use Cambridge. EQ. Your standard EQ unit has a low pass filter, a high pass filter, and then multiple bands that are band passes that can emphasize a certain frequency, a certain Q range. So if we were to say turn on this one, here's my Q. If I bring my Q really narrow, so these terms are somewhat familiar because we've used them in filtering in EQ for a long time. If I say a high pass filter is in, and this is the shape, how sharp, I can get super sharp, right? But if you notice up here at the top, we have dB per octaves. This is where we start to apply this to the synthesizer filters. So 6 dB slope, let's bring this down to say 655 hertz. If I bring up this slope, check that out, and then let's go to 24 dB, and I'm gonna unfreeze and watch how much loses of the energy. It changes the amount of cutting of high frequency to use a higher band per octave. It's just a sharper waterfall. It's a bigger, steeper hill. So it's gonna more accurately cut frequencies above it. So if we take this all out, thank you very much for your contribution to this discussion. Let's get back to Omnisphere. If we are to so this calls up the standard 12 dB filter. Go to 24 dB. Now, why do we have those? Why do we need different dB ranges to filters? Let's say the low pass filter all by itself. Why do we need a gentle 6 dB where you hear lots of high energy still? Where is that useful in synthesis? The answer is polyphonic synthesizer sounds. Sounds that don't need to be so heavily focused on a specific fundamental tone. Things that you would play. If you want to make synth brass, that sounds very nice. If I was to change this to be a 24 dB filter, well, let's go even crazier, 36 dB. The emphasis is focused. The strength, the energy put into the fundamental of the filter is accentuated. So it's great for funky synthesizers. You can do that kind of stuff all day long. But if you're trying to do synthesizer brass that are nice and gentle and have a, you know, if we added, just to flesh this out, if we added, say, a little analog chorus, we added a cool analog delay that's got a little bit of a chorusing to it. So you get the point. The slope controls the focus and how strong the emphasis on resonance is going to be. So you're going to get a whole different vibe with different filters. So if we go to 48 dB, that's seriously resonant, seriously funky, available. Also bass. The higher the slope, the more useful it is for bass types of applications. I can get a much rounder, stronger focus. Let's maybe not 48 dB is too high. So let's say even the one I usually use is, believe it or not, this one. And if we go down here to the analog deep waveforms, these tend to have a, I can get incredibly seriously low end. That's without I'll use the rolling keyboard so you don't hear the keyboard. Hear now how round that is? If I change this to be the 6 dB filter, it's more roundy, tubby, not so focused on the low end. I haven't changed anything. I could bring up the gain. But you hear all this extra frequencies being the harmonics. I'm going to change to 24 dB. They're gone. Okay, that's where the slope of a filter becomes important. You can get into controlling what type of sound you're going to use. Once again, that's the key to synthesis, is to have the idea in your mind focused on what you want to make. If you don't know what you're going to make, you're going to end up with spacey, blippy stuff with weird LFOs, and nobody else knows how to play it. So avoid that if you can. Have an idea. Listen to music. Listen to a sound that you like and go, I want to make that sound. We're going to do videos in the future where we take and we want to like target a certain sound from a certain song, and we'll look at how you get to that point. But before we get there, before we get to all that stuff, all you guys with all your, here's how you make your preset sound for this song. Set this to 16, set this to 32. There's no explanation of what you're actually doing or why you're doing it. So stop it. Explain what you're doing while you're doing things, or don't do it. Okay? So you get the idea. So the stronger the dB, the stronger the slope, the more emphasis on the fundamental or whatever this frequency point is you can have. So the stronger the slope, typically you're going to end up using for basses more than anything else. And the slighter the slope, the more polyphonic and nice it is to play across the keyboard. Just the way it works. On top of this, we get into the other types of filters. High-pass filters are great for all these kind of sounds. Now, I might want something with more high-frequency content because the deep sounds, They're pretty heavily pointed towards the sine wave, but that's the kind of sound you get with the high pass filter. The high end is always there. It doesn't go away. If you go to the band pass, this gives you the ability to selectively kill low end and high end and focus just on that middle band, wherever this cutoff point is. See how the high end's gone? So if we compare that to the low pass 24 dB, hear how the low end's always there? Change to a band pass. More focus on where this point is. That sub-octave is gone. Okay? So low pass, high pass, band pass makes it just an only band. There's another type of filtering you should know about, and this is where we start getting into the specialty filters. Things like all passes, notch. Notch is a very popular. And what is that doing? Let's look at it in another synthesizer that has pretty good graphic displays of what's happening. Let's go new patch. It's all stupid that they have the sustain. Let's go to their sustain point. I don't know why a default synth patch has the amplitude at half volume. That's a big mistake. But it is. So turn on the filter and let's click here and look at this. So we've seen these already. We've seen this, the 12 dB, 24. They have different types of low pass filtering which have different emphasis. See how this adds all these extra harmonics? Compare that to the, so let's go back to the 24 dB. And it's just a simple. Compare that to the Curtis analog. I will say Icarus has very accurate filters. It's very nice to work with. The 303-ish. See all these harmonics that are added. So different filters can get into very complex and as you're going to see in a minute, extremely complex with what's happening, with what frequencies are being emphasized and de-emphasized. Filtering is all about doing cool things to the sound. There's vocal things you can do. It's a set number of frequency points that are emphasized. Cool for vocal stuff. The notch we were talking about, here the resonance controls the range or the intensity, how wide that notch is, but kind of like a flanger. If you make this wider, it's scooping out with notching out an even wider range of frequencies. And putting that on a pad is really cool. You get some really cool effects from that. So then we start getting into down here. This is where you get to the crazier stuff. To start with, we have phasers as a filter. So here you have a phaser is basically these frequencies. Right? If I said LFO3 is changing. Let's try something else. Let's try comb. Cool. They have even things like fractal, which is like, why turn down the resonance? Look at these frequencies that are flying around. Very cool. That's a new type of sound, isn't it? This is one oscillator through a cool filter. And without the filter, so you got to realize a filter, this is why we started with oscillators. Oscillators have all this harmonic content all the way up the spectrum depending on the waveform. Then your filter is able to take that content and manipulate it in cool ways. That's what a filter does. And these newer, like fractal, we've not seen, I don't even know the math behind what a fractal is doing, but it's very cool. Here's another type. Very cool. Serum has some cool filters. They have the low pass, they have the band pass. Then he's got the comb is kind of in the flanger family. Let's say init the preset. Turn on the filter. And I can appreciate that the envelope is at max and there's no envelope generator assigned to the filter. Mr. Steve Duda did it right. And then here we have comb, which you don't see much of until you bring up resonance. That's an extremely cool effect. And the way to use combs to get some really fun things going is to bring down your decay. Let's go to your envelope 1 and make it just a short impulse. Right? Some of these other effects that get into here. Here's the flanging with different dB, like the intensity. So this requires using two sets of parameters, both these parameters for the frequency, but it's crazy. Isn't that cool? So if we keep playing around, we get to miscellaneous, I love the reverb. He created a reverb effect. Okay, so I expect all of you to sit down with one synthesizer today and explore all of the filters. Try them out. They all do different things. They all give you cool for chip noise, for drums. You know, call up a filter and then figure out what you would do with it. And the next lesson that's coming up very shortly, since it took me so long to make this one, sorry, is envelopes. Because we can go to an envelope and assign this to do something really cool to the sound. This is what envelopes give you the ability. So that's the missing element, will be the next lesson. Filters are where we start, but as soon as you call up a filter and as soon as you start playing with, let's unmodulate this. As soon as you start doing this, it's like, oh wow. I wish there was something that could keep just doing something cool to this one knob while I play with my hands. I can't play with both hands and have this happening, but you can. That's what we're going to talk about next. So filters are what shape the oscillators. So you have to have interesting oscillators and something like Serum that can go crazy and make unbelievable harmonic content, and then you put them through these really cool filters. Same thing with Icarus, because it's a new synth with all these really cool envelopes and all these cool oscillator choices and all these wavetables and all of these cross synthesis options. You can get incredibly cool combinations with those. Razor, still to this day, one of my favorite synthesizers. You could go to some of these pad sounds and the things happening sonically. This is the filter interaction combined with the oscillators, but the resonance from if you turn these off, it just sits there. All the interest is actually the comb filter, isn't it? Yeah. So all this kind of stuff you can do, like without filtering, it wouldn't be interesting. It's still cool because there's cool things inside a Razor. So this is from the Evo Razor library. But again, the filtering. And the envelopes, which we'll be talking about next. Okay, so I'm going to leave it right there. This should fill your head with all sorts of things to think about. No filtering. All that funny stuff in the oscillator that's going, right? All this. You still hear it just a little bit. Bring up the cutoff. That's what gives it character. That gives it its uniqueness. So filters, and now the next step that we'll talk about is envelopes. And that's where it all comes together and we get to have lots of fun. But you have to know your basics. You have to know the low pass, band pass, high pass, reject, notch, the flanges, the unique things you can do. Oh, I want to show you one more unique synthesizer. I absolutely love Absinthe 5 to death. And it has some of the coolest filter modes. And one of them that I'll show you a couple that are really cool. And then we're done. Then we're out of here. So let's go to the patch and let's call it just a simple sawtooth smooth. And let's go to the envelopes and make it short. This is one synth that we're not talking envelopes yet, so I'm not going to talk about that, but we will next week. Turn this on and here's your filters. And they have high pass, band pass, all these typical ones that we've seen, right? Bring up the resonance. See the multiple bands show up? Look down here. We have all sorts of cool stuff. Their comb filter in Absinthe. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now we get to new stuff like Cloud. Without randomizing this delay parameter. Let's go back to the envelope. It's one oscillator. but it sounds like a lot of oscillators. It's because of the filter. There's also things down here like frequency shifting. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So I love the cloud effect. I use this quite a bit when I was making my libraries for this. Very cool, unique sound. Okay, so filters are where it's at. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you for your support, as always, and I'll see you later.